I caught my husband lying in the most ordinary place imaginable, a grocery store. And the stranger who exposed him had no idea he was about to unravel 19 years of what I thought was a happy marriage. The worst part? By the time I uncovered the full truth, I found myself wishing it had been just an affair. Because what he was really hiding was far more calculated, far more devastating, and far more personal than I could have ever imagined. My husband, Eric, and I had been married for 19 years. And if you had asked me the day before everything fell apart, I would have told you we had one of those marriages that simply worked. We weren't the loud, passionate couple constantly posting about each other on social media or taking extravagant vacations every few months. Instead, we had built something quiet, dependable, and comfortable. We knew each other's habits better than we knew our own. Saturday mornings always followed the same rhythm. We'd grab coffee together, wander through the local farmer's market if the weather cooperated, then finish the morning with our weekly grocery shopping at the same supermarket we'd visited for years. It had become such a routine that neither of us ever questioned it. That particular Saturday started exactly like every other one. We laughed over the wrong brand of coffee he intentionally tossed into the cart because he knew I'd roll my eyes and replace it with my favorite. We debated which vegetables looked fresher, argued jokingly over cereal, and even shared one of those tiny forehead kisses that had become second nature after nearly 2 decades together. Looking back now, those ordinary little moments hurt more than the betrayal itself because they felt so authentic. If he was already lying to me, he was terrifyingly good at pretending everything was perfectly normal. When we reached the checkout line, Eric leaned toward me and said, "I'll be outside. One of my clients keeps calling. Give me 10 minutes." I nodded without thinking twice. He worked as a financial consultant, and weekend phone calls were common enough that I barely noticed anymore. I paid for the groceries, packed everything into reusable bags, and wheeled the cart toward the exit, expecting to see him standing outside with his phone pressed against his ear. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. I stepped closer to the entrance and scanned the parking lot, searching for our SUV, wondering if he'd simply parked farther away than usual. I was just about to walk outside when an older employee wearing the store's green vest approached me. His name tag read Frank, 22 years, and there was something unusually serious about the way he looked at me. "Ma'am," he said quietly, glancing around as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. "Would you mind coming with me for just a minute?" I assumed there had been a problem with my payment, or perhaps I'd forgotten something at the register. Instead, Frank led me down a hallway marked Employees Only and into a cramped security office filled with surveillance monitors. Without saying much, he sat down, pulled up a recording, and pressed play. There was Eric, but he wasn't outside taking a business call like he'd claimed. He was standing in a restricted hallway near the loading dock with a woman I'd never seen before. She looked to be around our age, dressed professionally, and although they weren't kissing or embracing, they stood much too close to be casual acquaintances. At one point, she rested her hand gently on his forearm while they spoke, and he leaned toward her with a familiarity that instantly made my stomach twist. I couldn't hear a single word they were saying, but I didn't need audio to recognize intimacy when I saw it. Frank remained silent until the video ended. Then, with a heavy sigh, he admitted, "I've seen them meet back there several times over the last few months. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But after my wife passed away, I realized I'd rather tell someone a painful truth than spend the rest of my life wondering if I should have spoken up." I thanked him somehow, though I honestly can't remember what I said. My mind had gone completely numb. I walked back through the store carrying my grocery bags like I was operating on autopilot. When I stepped into the parking lot, Eric was leaning casually against our SUV with his phone tucked into his pocket, smiling exactly the way he always smiled whenever he saw me. "Sorry," he laughed. "That client just wouldn't stop talking." Then he kissed my forehead like he had done thousands of times before. And for the first time in 19 years, I smiled back, while knowing he had just lied directly to my face. In that exact moment, I made a decision that changed everything. I wasn't going to accuse him. I wasn't going to cry, scream, or demand answers. If there was one lie, there were probably dozens more hiding behind it. And before I let him know I was onto him, I was going to uncover every single one. Instead of confronting him that night, I did something he never expected. I stayed quiet. The next morning, I bought a small black notebook and started documenting everything. Every late meeting, every mysterious phone call, every excuse that suddenly sounded rehearsed instead of believable. At first I felt guilty, almost ashamed for investigating my own husband. But after what I'd seen in that security footage, I knew blind trust wasn't an option anymore. Within 2 weeks, patterns began to emerge. Every Thursday he had a client dinner that somehow lasted until late evening. Every other Tuesday he disappeared for an investment meeting with a company I'd never heard him mention before. His phone, which had always been left charging on the kitchen counter, suddenly never left his side. Not while he showered, not while he walked the dog, not even when he went to the bathroom. He changed his passcode twice in 1 month and brushed it off as a new company security policy. I smiled and pretended to believe him. Then I decided to follow him. One Tuesday, I lied for the first time in our entire marriage and told him I had dinner with a client. Instead, I parked across the street from the coffee shop where he claimed he was meeting investors. 20 minutes later, the same woman from the grocery store walked in. They greeted each other like people who had done this countless times before. I expected to catch them holding hands or kissing, but that never happened. Instead, they exchanged folders, reviewed paperwork, pointed at financial documents, and spoke with the calm efficiency of business partners. Somehow that unsettled me even more. Whatever they were hiding wasn't simply emotional, it was organized. That realization pushed me to dig deeper. A few days later, while organizing our tax files, I discovered a bank account I'd never seen before hidden inside an old investment folder. After 19 years of marriage, I knew every account we supposedly owned, yet this one wasn't listed on any of our joint paperwork. That was the moment I called a divorce attorney named Rebecca. She listened without interrupting, reviewed my notes, and said something I'll never forget. Before you accuse him of anything, follow the money. She hired a forensic accountant who spent weeks tracing our finances. At first, everything looked perfectly normal. Then he uncovered hundreds of small transfers. $400 here, $600 there, moving quietly out of Eric's business accounts every month. Individually, they looked harmless, but over 5 years, they added up to more than $340,000. Every single payment went to the same consulting company, and when they finally uncovered the ownership records, my heart nearly stopped. The company belonged to the same woman from the grocery store. She wasn't just another woman in my husband's life. She was helping him secretly move our marital assets into shell companies and investment properties he'd been building behind my back for years. They weren't planning an affair. They were planning his exit from our marriage while making sure I'd be left with as little as possible. Instead of exploding, I followed my attorney's advice. We quietly froze accounts, gathered evidence, and prepared every legal document before Eric suspected a thing. Then I invited him to what he believed was an ordinary financial meeting. He walked into a conference room expecting a routine conversation. Instead, he found me sitting across from him beside my attorney, a forensic accountant, and a table covered with 5 years of bank records, corporate filings, property deeds, and transfer histories arranged in perfect chronological order. A few moments later, the other woman walked through the same door, completely unaware Eric had also been invited. Neither of them could hide the panic on their faces. I calmly walked them through every document without raising my voice once. Eric tried insisting it was all legitimate business. But before he could finish, my attorney slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside were court orders freezing the hidden assets, financial injunctions requiring full disclosure, and divorce papers already signed by me. The color drained from his face as he realized this wasn't the beginning of an argument. It was the end of a plan he'd spent years building. He kept saying he could explain, that he had intended to tell me eventually, but by then, his words meant absolutely nothing. The evidence spoke louder than any apology ever could. The divorce took months, but thanks to the preparation, I kept my fair share of everything we'd built together, while the hidden assets became part of the legal proceedings he could no longer conceal. Looking back now, I don't think the greatest gift I received was the settlement. It was Frank, the grocery store employee, deciding that one uncomfortable conversation was worth more than staying silent. If he'd chosen to mind his own business that day, I probably would have spent years living beside a man quietly preparing to erase me from the future we were supposed to share together.